Thousands of people were watching him. He was wearing a Santa hat. He had a beer in his hand. He was laughing at a screen, playing video games, talking to his audience like he had nowhere else in the world to be. 6 hours of content, Christmas-themed, relaxed, completely at ease. The kind of stream his subscribers had come to expect from him. Enthusiastic, harmless, a little nerdy. 17 miles away, a 32-year-old woman named Natalie McNally was being murdered in her own home. And here is the detail that makes this case unlike almost anything else in modern true crime. The man on that stream, the man thousands of people were watching, was not there. The video had been recorded 4 days earlier, saved as a file, and broadcast on a timer. A performance designed to place him somewhere he was not, witnessed by an audience that had no idea they were watching a recording. While Natalie McNally took her last breath, the digitaled version of him was laughing at a screen, apparently at home, apparently innocent, apparently untouchable. Welcome back to Cold Case Britain, the channel that goes beyond the headlines to understand what really happened, why it happened, and what it means. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button now. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from tonight. We've got viewers joining us from across the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and beyond. Let's see where the Cold Case Britain community is tuning in from. Now, let's talk about Natalie. Natalie McNally grew up in Craigavon, County Armagh, in Northern Ireland. She was the daughter of Noel and Bernadette, and the only girl among 4 siblings, 3 brothers named Brendan, Declan, and Niall. Her family adored her. Her youngest brother Niall later said that because she was the only girl, the family treated her like a princess. They called her Nats. From very early in her childhood, Natalie lived with diabetes. It was something she managed every single day, quietly, without drama. Her family was protective of her because of it. But Natalie was never fragile in spirit. Her brother Brendan described her as smart, strong, independent, and capable. He also spoke about how she connected with animals in a way that said something about who she was. She understood things that other people simply did not notice. Natalie was the kind of person who left an impression. Lurgan Model Primary School, where she had been a pupil, remembered her as kind, caring, and capable, a smile for everyone. A local counselor who had gone to school with her described her as a young woman with a bright future ahead of her. These were not polite tributes written out of grief. They were consistent across the people who had known her at different stages of her life. She was also someone with strong convictions. Her brother Niall described her as passionate about equality, about the rights of women, about LGBTQ+ causes. She was bubbly, positive, and deeply social. Niall called her the life and soul of the family. A people person, someone who would do anything for anyone, with a heart of gold. Natalie had studied law at Queen's University Belfast, and later moved into communications and marketing, working for TransLink, Northern Ireland's public transport authority. She was active on social media through her work and had built a meaningful professional presence. Her combination of legal training, communication skills, and genuine warmth made her exactly the kind of person who thrived in that environment. Outside of work, she loved cats and dogs, loved music, and loved the band The Killers. She had moved into her own home at Silverwood Green in Lurgan, building an independent life for herself, staying close to her family in Craigavon, seeing friends, living fully. At 32 years old, she was exactly where she had worked to be. In August 2022, Natalie matched with someone on Bumble. His name was Steven McCulla. He was 36 years old, from Woodland Gardens in Lisburn, a town about 17 miles from Lurgan. He was a YouTuber known online as VoteSaxon07, and he made content about video games, pop culture, Doctor Who, robot toys, and merchandise. He had built up around 37,000 subscribers, with hundreds of videos and more than 15 million total views. McCulla also worked part-time as an audience editor at the Belfast Telegraph, which meant he understood how digital content worked, how audiences behaved online, and how to build and manage a public-facing persona. To the outside world, he came across as enthusiastic, quirky, and harmless. His first WhatsApp message to Natalie, after they matched, reportedly introduced himself as that robot weirdo from Bumble, leaning into his nerdy image as a form of charm. On August 7th, 2022, he sent that first message. What followed was a 133-day relationship documented through hundreds of WhatsApp messages. They went on dates. They talked about pets, work, hobbies, and the future. They spent nights at each other's homes. By October, McCulla had met Natalie's family. He referred to her unborn baby as Little Squish. He talked with her about moving in together. To the people around them, they looked like two people building something together. To Natalie's family, McCulla seemed like another piece of happy news. A partner, a father-to-be, someone stepping into a future with their daughter. But evidence, presented later at trial, would suggest a very different reality behind closed doors. A former girlfriend of McCulla's testified in court that he had been controlling, possessive, and menacing during their relationship. She said he had hit her and secretly recorded their counseling sessions. These were allegations he disputed. But the jury heard them, and they painted a picture of a man capable of exercising hidden control beneath a harmless public surface. A man with two identities that had been running in parallel for years. By November 2022, Natalie was 15 weeks pregnant. She had a scan booked. She had already thought about names. Dean if the baby was a boy, Zara if it was a girl. Her family knew about the pregnancy and were excited. The baby would have been the family's first grandchild, the first niece or nephew for her brothers. Natalie was planning to share the gender news around Christmas at what should have been a celebration. December 2022 was supposed to be one of the happiest months of Natalie's life. She was approaching the end of her first trimester. She was in a relationship. She had her career, her home, her family, and her health. She was on the edge of announcing a new chapter. What she did not know was that something had already shifted. Prosecutors later argued that McCulla had at some point accessed her phone. He knew the password and had seen messages she had exchanged with a former partner. The prosecution's theory was that what he saw had triggered something in him. Jealousy, possessiveness, a sense of losing control. Whatever the catalyst, the evidence would later show that by the second week of December, McCulla had already begun to plan, and he planned carefully. On December 14th or 15th, 2022, Steven McCulla sat down and recorded a 6-hour and 4-minute video. He called it the Violent Night Christmas live gaming stream. He wore a Santa hat. He drank. He played Grand Theft Auto and Robot Wars. He spoke to the camera as if he were talking to a live audience, making it clear over and over again that he was spending the evening at home, going nowhere. During the recording, he casually mentioned that he would not be responding to the live chat due to technical problems. He also mentioned he would not be using his phone. Those two statements, dropped into hours of footage as if they were throwaway comments, were not throwaway at all. They were deliberate. They addressed in advance the two things that could most easily expose the video as a fabrication. No live interaction and no phone activity. He had thought this through from every angle. On December 16th and 17th, he told friends he was planning a live stream for Sunday evening. He advertised it as a surprise. He was building anticipation, making sure people would tune in, making sure witnesses would exist. Sunday, December 18th, the day of the World Cup final between Argentina and France. Natalie spent part of the afternoon at McCulla's home in Lisburn. While she was there, McCulla had been searching transport timetables, bus routes from Dunmurry to Lurgan, and routes back toward Lisburn later in the evening. He was building a route. In the afternoon, Natalie left his house and went to her parents' home in Craigavon to watch the final with her family. After the match, she returned to her own home at Silverwood Green in Lurgan. A normal Sunday, a family afternoon, a World Cup final, a woman going home. What's the weather like where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. And if this is the first time you're hearing about Natalie's case, please share this video. The more people who know this story, the more people understand just how sophisticated and calculated violence against women can be. At 4 p.m., McCulla advertised his supposed upcoming live stream on YouTube. At 5:57 p.m., he messaged Natalie saying he was going to stream for the evening. She replied that she might look at the live stream later. At 6 p.m. exactly, the pre-recorded video began to play on his channel. His phone went dark. At 6:36 p.m., CCTV near his home in Lisburn captured a figure carrying a bag. At around 7:36 p.m., bus CCTV recorded a man with his face covered, hood up, face covering on, black gloves, yellow gloves visible underneath. He was traveling from Dunmurry toward Lurgan. He was not dressed casually. He had covered himself deliberately. The bus arrived in Lurgan. CCTV tracked the figure moving through several streets towards Silverwood Green. The prosecution's timeline placed the person entering Natalie's home at 8:51 p.m. At 8:24 p.m., 27 minutes before that entry, Natalie had logged on to YouTube. She watched part of what she believed was her boyfriend's live stream. She saw him at home, laughing, gaming, drinking, apparently relaxed, apparently in Lisburn. She had no reason to think anything was wrong. She watched the man she believed was safely 17 miles away, while the man himself was already in Lurgan, already moving toward her street. She closed the app. She went about her evening. She was reassured by the performance. And that reassurance, that specific moment of false safety, is one of the most disturbing details in any case this channel has ever covered. The prosecution said the attack lasted approximately 40 minutes. Natalie was beaten, strangled, and stabbed. A state pathologist later found 48 separate points of injury. She suffered stab wounds to the neck, heavy blows to the head, and compression of the neck. Prosecutors said either the stab wounds or the strangulation alone could have caused her death. She was 32 years old. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Her baby's name was going to be Dean. At 9:31 p.m., the figure left Natalie's home. At 9:49 p.m., a man got into a taxi near a bar in Lurgan, dressed in different clothes from those worn earlier. The taxi reached Lisburn at 11:12 p.m. CCTV showed the passenger throwing 2 items over a hedge. At 11:16 p.m., McCulla's phone came back to life. On his YouTube channel, the pre-recorded video continued to play until 12:05 a.m., when it was manually stopped. Minutes later, McCulla sent Natalie a message. The next day, he sent more, asking if she was okay, saying he was worried. On the evening of December 19th, McCulla arrived at Natalie's house and called 999. He presented himself as the shocked partner who had found her body. Police arrived. McCulla was distraught, overwhelmed. He told investigators he had been live streaming on the night she was killed, at home in Lisburn the entire time, and suggested that maybe Natalie's former boyfriend could have been responsible. He was arrested on suspicion of murder on December 19th. But when police looked into the YouTube stream, thousands of viewers, hours of footage, it seemed to confirm he was elsewhere. On December 20th at 7:34 a.m., he was released. And on December 24th, Natalie's family were told that McCulla was no longer considered a suspect. On Christmas Day, Steven McCulla attended Natalie's wake at her parents' home. He was welcomed as another devastated loved one. He was given time alone with her coffin. What did you know about how digital alibis work before watching this video? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because what happened next is the detail that changed everything about this investigation. On January 26, 2023, McCulla visited the McNally family home. When he left, he realized he had forgotten his phone. He returned about 40 minutes later to collect it. But the phone had been recording the entire time. Prosecutors later argued he had left it deliberately, to capture what Natalie's family was saying, to find out whether they suspected him. He was sitting across from the family of the woman he had killed, listening to their private grief, measuring their suspicion, still performing, still managing, still in control, or so he believed. On January 28th, more than 1,000 people gathered in Lurgan for a public rally in Natalie's memory. McCulla attended. The crowd was reportedly told that a video montage of Natalie had been made by her loving partner. What McCulla had not fully anticipated, or had catastrophically underestimated, was the SNE's cyber crime unit. Investigators began examining his devices and his digital history closely. What they found dismantled everything. The 6-hour and 4-minute video had not been broadcast live on December 18th. It had been recorded approximately 4 days earlier, around December 14th or 15th. It had been saved as a video file. And in the early hours of December 19th, after Natalie had already been killed and after McCulla had returned to Lisburn, the file had been deleted, then deleted from the recycle bin. A digital forensic analyst testified that the evidence showed extensive proof that the broadcast was pre-recorded and later streamed as if it were live. This was not a gap in the evidence, a missing detail, or an unverified theory. It was forensic fact recovered from the devices themselves. Video files retain creation data. Deleted files leave traces in system logs and recycle bin records. The forensic picture was coherent, datable, and airtight. The video had been created around December 14th, broadcast on December 18th from a saved file rather than from a live capture, and deleted in the early hours of December 19th after the killing. On February 1st, 2023, police confronted McCulla with this evidence. His initial reaction was disbelief. The video was still visible on YouTube, he said. How could it not have been live? Then, after that interview, he provided a new statement. He admitted the gaming session had been pre-recorded, but he claimed he had been home, drinking and sleeping that night, and that the real killer had deliberately planted a trail of evidence pointing toward him. On February 2nd, 2023, Steven McCulla was charged with the murder of Natalie McNally. McCulla's trial began in February 2026 at Belfast Crown Court before Mr. Justice Patrick Kenny. A jury of 6 men and 6 women heard 5 weeks of evidence. Prosecutors described the murder as planned, calculated, and premeditated. Their case rested on CCTV footage, phone data, transport records, the fake love stream, his shifting explanations, and his sustained effort to divert suspicion toward Natalie's former partner. The defense argued that the case was entirely circumstantial. They pointed to the possibility of another killer, specifically Natalie's former boyfriend, who had also been arrested during the investigation and who admitted to having been untruthful with police in some statements. McCulla did not take the stand. His defense team made the case that no direct evidence placed him at the scene, that there was no eyewitness, and that the evidence could point elsewhere. The jury deliberated for just over 2 hours. On March 23, 2026, they returned a unanimous verdict, guilty of murder. In the court gallery, Natalie's family and supporters reacted with cheers and tears. Her brother Declan said that having her in their lives had been the greatest joy they would ever know. He said she would have been an amazing mother to baby Dean. He also said that violence against women and girls was a shame on society, and that his family's thoughts were with every other family still waiting for justice. What made this case extraordinary from a forensic standpoint was the role of digital evidence, not as supporting material, but as the central pillar of the prosecution. The fake livestream alibi worked initially because it exploited in something real and deeply embedded in how we interact with online content. A 6-hour video with a public timestamp, a recognizable presenter, and an established subscriber base looks, on the surface, exactly like a legitimate live stream. Police, like ordinary viewers, had no immediate reason to question it. The alibi was not just a lie told to investigators. It was a public digital artifact with an apparent audience of thousands. What the cyber forensic team did was treat the video itself as a crime scene. They examined the file metadata, the creation date, the deletion timestamps, and the manner in which the broadcast had been delivered. The picture they built was not theoretical. It was timestamped, evidenced, and irrefutable. This case also demonstrated how CCTV evidence works most powerfully when combined with digital data. The bus footage, the street cameras, and the taxi records created a physical timeline. The phone data, when his device went silent, when it came back to life, created a behavioral map. And the digital forensics on the video created a temporal anchor that destroyed the only real defense available to McCulla. It was not traditional detective work that broke this alibi. It was investigators treating a YouTube video like a crime scene. The psychological profile that emerges from this case is one of two parallel identities that had existed in McCulla long before Natalie's murder. Publicly, he was a cheerful, eccentric YouTuber, enthusiastic, harmless-seeming, someone people associated with robot toys and Doctor Who. That persona was not incidental. It was cultivated over years and across thousands of hours of content. He had learned how to make people trust what they saw on a screen. He had learned that a performing self can completely obscure a private one. Privately, testimony suggested a pattern of control, possessiveness, and violence. The behavior described by his former partner, the secret recording of counseling sessions, the physical violence, the menacing possessiveness, points toward a person for whom intimate relationships were not partnerships, but territories. Something to be monitored, something to be controlled. The murder itself was not impulsive. The planning that went into it, the pre-recorded video, the route research, the disguise, the change of clothes, the planted recording device at the McNally family home, speaks to a person who processes threat through strategy. The prosecution's theory was that seeing messages on Natalie's phone triggered a jealousy-driven crisis. But the response to that crisis was calculated rather than explosive. That distinction matters. It suggests someone who believed their own ability to manage reality, including other people's perceptions of them, outweighed the risk of what they were doing. His behavior after the murder reinforces this completely. He did not flee. He did not disappear. He inserted himself back into the center of the grief, attending the wake, attending the rally, sitting with the family, performing loss. At the sentencing hearing, the court heard that he had first told a probation officer he was convinced he was not guilty, then said that after the swift jury verdict, he began to think he might be responsible, then described himself as a monster. These are not the statements of someone with genuine insight. They are the statements of someone who is still, even after conviction, managing how they are perceived. The probation service assessed him as presenting a high likelihood of further offending. Share this video right now if you've made it this far. Not for the algorithm, because Natalie McNally's story has something in it that goes far beyond one man's guilt. And the more people who hear it, the more important it becomes. There is a dimension to this case that speaks directly to how we live now, how we consume online content, and what it means to watch someone perform their life in public. McCulla's alibi was designed to exploit something real. We trust what we see on a screen. When someone is live on YouTube, when we can see them, hear their voice, watch them drink and laugh and talk, we assume they are present. We assume the timestamp is real. We assume the performance is happening right now. That assumption is so deeply embedded in how we interact with streaming platforms that it became temporarily a legal alibi. A jury had to be shown forensic evidence before the obvious question, was any of this actually live, could be definitively answered. This case arrived at a moment when deepfakes, AI-generated video, and pre-recorded content presented as live are all expanding rapidly. McCulla did not use advanced technology. He used a standard video recorder and a YouTube upload. But the principle he exploited, that a public digital performance creates a presumption of presence, is one that will only become more relevant as the tools to fake that presence become more accessible and more convincing. And there is something else worth sitting with, something that does not leave you easily once you know it. At 8:24 p.m. on December 18th, Natalie McNally logged into YouTube and watched part of what she believed was her boyfriend's live stream. She saw him at home. She heard his voice. She watched him laugh. She had no reason, not a single reason, to question any of it. The man on the screen was familiar. His face, his voice, his humor, his environment. She closed the app and went about her evening, reassured, safe, unaware that the man she was watching was already on her street. That moment, that specific moment of false safety given to her by the very person who was about to take her life, is something this case will be remembered for, long after the verdict fades from the headlines. McCulla's YouTube channel had over 15 million views before it was taken down after his conviction. Thousands of people watched him. They subscribed to him. They tuned in on the night of December 18th because he had advertised the stream as a Christmas surprise. Some of those people may have been watching the pre-recorded video playing on a loop while Natalie McNally was being killed. Not knowing that the entire performance had one purpose and one audience of one. Natalie McNally was smart, independent, loving, and ready to become a mother. She deserved the Christmas she was planning. She deserved the announcement she was saving. She deserved to hold baby Dean. Steven McCulla received a mandatory life sentence for her murder. The minimum tariff, the number of years he must serve before any consideration of parole, had not yet been set at the time of this script. The prosecution was asking for between 27 and 35 years. We will keep you updated as that develops. If this video moved you, if it made you think about someone you know, about the content you trust, about the violence that hides behind the most ordinary-looking lives, subscribe to Cold Case Britain so you don't miss what comes next. Share this video, leave a comment, because every person who hears Natalie's name is another person who understands that what happened to her was not random, not unpredictable, and not unstoppable. Her name was Natalie McNally. She was going to be a mother. She deserved so much more than this.